Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, welcome to another weekly wrap up. Today is what, 11, 12? I'm not sure, but I do know that we are at my birthday week. Monday the 18th is my 31st birthday. I made it another year. This last week has felt like one of the longest weeks ever. Actually, there's just been a lot of personal stuff that came up, a lot of just like all over the place, but the Romance Takeover Readathon is actually going on right now. I hope you're participating in that. The night that you get this video, if you watch it the day it goes up, we do have a live chat tonight to wrap everything up. This time around, it's been a bit more of like a chill readathon, I think, and part of that is that some stuff has like come up that I couldn't have foreseen in the middle of it, but I still love being tagged and everything and seeing how much romance everyone's reading, and it just makes me super, super happy. So let's pull that in a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into everything. Also, if you're watching this the day it went up, my Etsy shop still does have everything is 18% off until my birthday. So there's book sleeves. I do have a very select few, like these are the only two. They might not even still be available by the time you see this. These are laptop sleeves. I've been just making these as I have like time, but like they fit like my Chromebook. They'll also fit, I mean, honestly, they'd fit big hardcovers if you want to, but they're made for laptop sleeves. So check that out. The dimensions of them is on the site. People always message me. I'm like, I put it in the description, so go check that out if you would like to and get a deal on those. So I do also have a new patron to welcome to the channel. We have Meg, who just joined the other day. Meg, thank you so much. Every little bit helps add up to helping me continue to do this. We are coming up on my 2 years of being full-time, which is just crazy. I'm just so thankful every day, and it's because of every one of you, whether you're just watching this, whether you support monetarily, whether you encourage me in other ways, you make this happen. So you know what, 31 doesn't look like I thought it would look, but I'm also doing things that I love so much, and it's amazing. So without further ado, let's get into the books, because I think I have 10 to talk about this week. And there was, I believe I had this marked out, I think I have, yeah, I have 4 new 5-star books to talk about. One of them is like almost a 6-star. We'll see when I think on it. It might even go higher. But the first one I have is actually a DNF, but I promise this is a soft DNF. I absolutely want to get back to this book. I just couldn't get into it, and I'd been trying and trying and trying, and I just was like, okay, we're just going to wait. And that is That First Flight by Jenn McMahon. I am horrible at saying her name. She actually sent me a copy of the book, so I feel so bad that I couldn't get into it. Again, it's totally me. There's nothing wrong with this book. It was really cute to start. I'm about 100 pages into it. It just wasn't zoning for me, so I feel bad about that. But it isn't a hard DNF. I don't have bad things to say, and I do suggest maybe you check it out. Maybe you can encourage me to read it. So this one is actually a single mom who wants to be a chef, and there is a hero who, he's from a very wealthy family, and he's also a photographer, and they actually meet on a plane ride, and they have this really great interaction, and then, you know, they don't think they'll ever see each other again, and then he runs into her, and through their chatting, he ends up offering for her and her daughter to stay with him while she works at a new place. He's there to like help her out. I don't want to say any more than that. And also, I didn't get too much further than that, but it's clear there's some crazy attraction between the two of them, but instead he like offers to help her, and in doing that they actually end up like sharing the same place that they live while it happens. So there's a lot of coincidences that went into it, but it is a single mom and a like slow burn, and very friends to lovers between them. So there was a lot to love. Like I said, I'm a mood reader, and I don't get to mood read too much these days, but sometimes I still have to just be like, okay, I have to put this aside and just let it go and not get like upset with myself about not being able to finish it, because we got to move on. So I have nothing bad to say about that one. Hopefully I will get back to it soon. All right, next up was Blitzed by Devney Perry. This was one of my anticipated reads. I didn't get an arc for it, but that's okay because the audiobook came out the same day as the book, and I actually listened to this like last Sunday. That's what I let myself do all day. Like after church, I went to the coffee shop and listened to it, and I had just the best time. So Blitz is book 2 in the Treasure State Wildcats, and this one is actually a coach and a player. But it's not his player, but it's still forbidden. Like, if you read Coach, you'll know that, like, their school had some scandal that recently just happened. And so it even more so makes any, like, impropriety between a coach and a student at this college, like, just so much more, like, people are scrutinizing it. But Torin, who is one of our football coaches and actually went to high school with the characters from the first book, so they're all like working at this place together now, and he has a 4th of July barbecue at his home for like all of his neighborhood, and there's this woman that comes to his barbecue, and they end up having this all night together and this great connection. And then she leaves him her number, and he hasn't like messaged her back, because to him it was just so like magical. And also he knows that if she was at his barbecue, that means she probably lives in the neighborhood, and he's a little like nervous about what that could be. Anyway, he has reasons. But when Jensen is getting taken around before school's to start, she's a volleyball player, and she's just transferred to this school after leaving in a bit of a scandal from the other school. She is a senior, so she's 21, almost turning 22. And when she gets introduced to all the coaches in the athletic department, she discovers that the man she had a one-night stand with is the football coach. Both of them are horrified by this. She doesn't want any scandal, and he's like, I can't lose my job. Like, he has family that depends on him. His aunt and his cousins, he helps them out. They have a farm outside of town, and he just can't have any scandal. So this then becomes a forbidden relationship. But to top it off, not only is she a student there, but the place that she lives in the neighborhood, yeah, it's right next to his house, which he didn't know because he'd seen 2 like middle-aged people move in, but those are actually the parents of one of her roommates, and she's rooming with other girls on the volleyball team. So she lives right next door to him. So we begin this slow burn with the 2 of them, actually, you know, and I love stories like that where they have a one-night stand, but then it has to be a slow burn, and I just really love how it worked out. Now, something I don't normally like, I don't really like flashbacks. I don't like them. I always say I would rather see the past and then go to what's happening now. But the way that this would work is like every few chapters, there would be a little clip of the party, like it would say the party, and we'd go back and see. And I don't know, I just really liked how it worked, because as we're, you know, seeing them try to resist each other, we flash back to the party and see how strong that connection was and why it's so hard for them to just walk away from it. It's really beautiful to see. So I loved this one. I listened, as I said, to the audio, and this one was narrated by Jason Clark and Vanessa Edwin, who I love both of them, so that was great. And I gave this one 5 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. It's my favorite Devney Perry that I've ever read. Like, honestly, I've read, I think, like 6 or 7 of her books before. Mostly the motorcycle series, and then there's like one other one I read of hers that was like part of another series, right? But this is my favorite one for sure. I loved it. It's that kind of forbidden romance where there's a lot at stake, and they also are really trying to follow it. You know, like, you know, one of the examples, I was talking about this with Jensen, is that sometimes there's that situation that's in like Here With Me by Brooke Montgomery, which I loved. I did give that book 6 stars last year. But that one, they don't really try that hard to stay away from each other. Like, they say they're staying away, but then they're like hooking up in the tack room like every 5 minutes. Which again, was hot. I'm not saying it wasn't hot, but they don't try that hard. And I feel like Jensen and Torin are so like tortured by this, because they know what potential they have, but also they know like what's at stake. So anyway, really liked it. Okay, next up, I actually had a reread, but I had an ALC of it. So I've been listening to the Wrench Kings, and I happen to have already read them, but there's an opportunity to get the audiobooks, and I'm really liking those. So I listened to The Brazen One by Daisy Jane, and I actually rated this book higher after listening to it. And I also appreciated the book more when I listened to it, which does happen now and then. I often just love audiobooks so much. Of course I do, blah, blah, blah. But I really, really love this series particularly. And part of that has to do with the fact that like Daisy Jane narrates most of her own books, especially because of how like spicy and kinky they are. And she also finds really great male narrators to do it with her, and they're duet narrated, and they're just so good. So this one was narrated by Daisy Jane and Ryan West, and The Brazen One is the one about Atticus and Goldie. Okay, so I read this back in January. It actually is what like turned me on to this series. I read this one first. This is book 2, because one of my friends recommended this one, and I liked it then, but it felt like a little bit too cheesy, which, okay, these books are cheesy. They're kinky and cheesy and fun. Like, they're fun. But listening to it, I loved Ryan West's performance as Atticus. He's so growly and grumpy. And this guy, he's I believe he's like 39 or 40. Or maybe he's 42. I don't remember, but he's like in his 40s. And he's kind of the mentor at Wrench Kings. He's very grumpy. But he loves his parents. We see him with his parents sometimes. And he's just on his own, basically, and very grumpy, but he does care for his Wrench Kings guys. And then Goldie is best friends with the heroine from the first one. So, like, Atticus is friends with the hero from the first one, and so they're, like, brought together by their friends, and they're very kind of, like, resistant to each other. But slowly, they are getting to know each other, and then the real, like, big event is that there's supposed to be this weekend at the cabin that, like, all the friends are going to stay at. And Atticus gets there first, and then Goldie gets there, and just after Goldie gets there, this big storm comes in and snows them in for the night, and the others aren't able to get there, and they have to kind of stay the night. So yeah, Goldie and Atticus are stuck there together, and things start to kind of bubble up. So Goldie, she does have a lot of insecurities going on. She recently lost her job that she had with a baseball team, and we find out more details about why that happened to her. And she is now having to kind of like start her career over. Like, she wanted to be in PR, and now she has to move to HR. And she has a very unsupportive mother. Her mother is a narcissist and kind of like emotionally abusive. And it causes some anxiety and actually some like disordered eating on Goldie's part, because her mother is always just picking at her. So it is a little bit hard to see, but I think it's handled very well by this story. And also, I think it's handled well for how Atticus and Goldie go kind of slow in their relationship, because they know she needs to like work through some things, and that if they rush into a relationship, she would kind of put all of her worth on how Atticus sees her, and he doesn't want that for her. So this was very emotionally intelligent, as well as, of course, having some good kinkies in it. So Atticus is a voyeur. There's also the misuse of a cucumber, as I said before, the last time I reviewed this. But I really liked it upon reread, and I actually moved it from a 4 to a 4.5, and it is a 4 on the spice scale. So yeah, this one, like I said, has some disordered eating and a verbally abusive mom. But there is some squirting and a little bit of like doming that happens in this one. It's very cute. So definitely recommend this series. The audiobooks are great. Although that audiobook isn't out until the 21st. So I'll remind you guys when that one's out. Okay, then there is If You Give a Single Dad a Nanny by Ann Einerson. And I've really been looking forward to this one. I was so happy to get an ARC. I hopefully will be getting a copy soon. I don't know. Mail has been taking its sweet ass time lately, okay? It's so frustrating how long mail has been taking. But I know Anne was going to send me some like cute swag from this. And like, I loved this book. I love this book so much, okay? Absolutely. It was so adorable. And this one is a single dad and a nanny romance. If you can't tell from the title, she really doesn't hide what it's about. But this is book 1 in the Aspen Grove series. However, there was a Christmas novella that was If You Give a Grump a Holiday Wish List. That's about Dylan's sister. And so we see them. So Dylan's from a very wealthy family. He also is, he works for the family business, and he has a 6-year-old daughter. I think she's 6. Yeah, he has a 6-year-old daughter who is the cutest thing ever. And then Marlo, she is his new neighbor at the beginning of this. We actually see things like when she moves in. And so she moves in and she has a sweet pooch whose name is Waffles. She has a sweet dog named Waffles. And he and the little girl absolutely adore each other. And Dylan is like, doesn't want this dog around, doesn't want him, like, he like runs into his backyard, and Dylan just doesn't like that. But his daughter and Waffles become really tight. And now Marlo, she's actually an artist, and she lives next door. She's actually a really good artist too, by the way, but like Dylan thinks it's like a hobby thing or whatever. So yes, Dylan is a bit snobby in the beginning, but what Anne does that makes this work is something that the best grumpy hero writers know. Okay, you got to give that grumpy hero, if they're going to be grumpy and a little bit mean to the heroine at the start, they have to have some traits that make you love them so much that you're willing to wait for them to get on board, right? And the traits Dylan has is being the sweetest girl dad you have ever read, okay? So yes, he has to have nannies for his little girl, but he makes a priority of, like, when he's home, he is all about his daughter. He knows how to do her hair for school. Like, his sister and his mom let him practice hairstyles on them so that he can braid and like curl and do ponies for his little girl so that she isn't missing out. Like, that one thing about him, you guys, the fact that he's like, my little girl deserves to have cute hair, but he can't do a fishtail braid. That's his one little weakness. He can't do a fishtail. And of course Marlo can, so we get to see those skills later. But he adores his little girl. He does like all the cooking for her. He like meal prep stuff. He has glasses. He's adorable. I loved him. So it's this perfect balance, because it's not like he's ever really mean to Marlo, but he is like annoyed by her chaoticness, and you know, his life has to be very well scheduled so that he has time for his daughter and all these things. And so, but he's so loves his daughter, and he's so sweet with her that you're willing to wait for him to get on board, right? So Marlo ends up becoming the nanny when his nanny Kendra, who, there's nothing wrong with Kendra, but I believe she has a family emergency or something happens where she has to like move away. And so his parents can help a little bit, but also here's the thing about this. His parents really like Marlo. And if you give a Grandpa Holiday wish list, Marlo was actually invited to their like Christmas dinner, because she has 2 parents, but they're very like detached from her life. So she's kind of on her own. And so she had come to the family dinner. So Dylan's parents really like Marlo, and they like that she lives next door to him. There is an age gap in this one. It's about 10 years. I think she's 23 and he's 33. So it's one of those where like it's an age gap, but like it's not the end of the world by any means, right? It's nothing huge. And so the mom wants to like push him towards having Marlo be the nanny, because she works from home. She could definitely be able to do it. And so the mom suggests, well, how about Marlo does it? And he's like, Marlo doesn't want to do that. And Marlo's like, I mean, I would do it for her. So we then have the next phase of the book, right, where she's starting to be the nanny, but he is like looking for any reason not to like her. And as a certain nanny we love, Willa, she just won't put up with it. She's like, you either trust me to be this nanny or you don't. Like, I'm here for your daughter. I don't care if you like me, but like, we need to get along. So that's when he really starts to get this respect for her. So I think I've said enough. You'll see where the rest of this goes. This was beautiful. There's no third act breakup in this one, but it is like a slow burn between them. But once Dylan decides that he wants this girl, he is all about it. I loved this so much. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Part of that is that this went on a little too long. That is kind of the balance of like, if you're not going to have a third act breakup and things are going to go well, you know, like things are going to go well, which is great. I love that. But then you need to know like when to end it, because if we're not waiting for a third act breakup, we just kind of end up like waiting around for something to go wrong. And then if it doesn't go wrong, it's kind of like, well, why'd you drag it on so long? I don't know. It's just a small critique of this. I think most of you will all just love this book. It was so sweet. And I honestly really like this cover. I think it's cute for being it just has so much personality, even without having like you know, like a couple cover. I think it's so cute. So I can't wait. There's going to be the other brothers in this series. We're going to get their stories. And we definitely get a hint at what the next tropes are going to be by the end of this one, which is great. So yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars. I rounded up to 5 for my review. It's a 3 on the spice scale. And again, this one, he has glasses. Also, there's some good girl happening in this one. So I adored it. Okay, next up, I had a reread actually of The Queen of All That Dies. So I am annotating the bind up of The Fallen World for one of my patrons. So I made it through the first one, and I'll be working my way through the next 2 in the next couple months. So I read this series back in 2020. I listened to the audiobooks, and I don't love this series too much. And I did warn my patron. I was like, I'm not a huge fan of this. Are you okay if I don't totally love this? But she's a good sport. And I mean, it's not that I hate it. It's just I find it kind of like overly dramatic. I know that's such a tough thing to say, but I don't understand kind of like why the king likes her so much is kind of the thing for me. He is this, you know, supposed to be this evil king, King Lazuli. This is kind of a dystopian world, and our heroine, Serenity, she is a part of this like, basically this like, ambassador group that's trying to make a deal with him to end the war, and he ends up agreeing that he'll end the war if she marries him. But she is a bitchy, annoying, difficult woman, and I don't understand why he wants to marry her. She just goes too hard with stuff, okay? Now, granted, he's supposed to be this all evil dude, and like all this death is like all of it's his fault and all these things, and it's just, and it's a lot of depressing. So I reread this though. I'm trying to keep a very open mind upon the reread of this since it's been a while. And also I'm just trying to see what's great about it. Now the fun part is that my patron, this is, you know, as you can tell, like this is her copy, and she actually annotated this, and now she's wanting me to add mine in. So I am having a good time reading what she likes about it, and that's helping me to have a little bit of a better mood about it. But anyway, I read the first one in here. I will get to the second volume soon. But upon my reread of this one, I did give it a 3.5 star, and it's like a 2 on the spice scale. There's not too much that happens in this one, although Laura Thalassa doesn't usually go like too graphic anyway. She keeps hers a bit more vague, and this one does have trigger warnings for death of a parent, terminal illness, and plenty of violence for sure. Okay, next up we have Ruby Tears by Pepper Winters. So this is actually funny because I forgot that I signed up for this, okay? And I think Ruby forgot that people signed up for it too, because about 3 days before the book was supposed to come out, she sent out an email saying that she would send us either the audiobook or the ebook if we wanted. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'll have time to read the ebook, so send me the audiobook. And I haven't read a Pepper Winters in a long time. To make a long story short, I did read Tears of Tess and the second book, but I stopped reading that series, which I think there's 4 books and an epilogue story, because the shit that she kept continually putting the characters through got to be too much for me. Like, it's about the same couple throughout that whole series, and it just was shitstorm after awful thing after awful thing, and we'd think we have a happy for now at the end, and then they'd go into the next thing, and it just hurt too much. It hurt me too much. But I saw she was starting a new series, and I couldn't help myself. This one is a spin-off from that, and this one is about Henry Mercer, who is the brother of Q. And he has some pretty sick desires, but he also wants to help his brother. And what Q does is he tries to break up sex trafficking rings. He tries to stop human trafficking from happening. And so he gives Henry the job of trying to take down the jewelry box, which is this sex island, basically, which I'm sure you can think of some things in history that might be pointed to. But there are these 30-odd human sex slaves there who have been forced there. They have collars and wristlets put on, and they're forced to do whatever the members of the jewelry box want to do to them. So to get a membership, you usually have to, you know, have committed one of the crimes that they there do. And then you have to be like initiated into it. And so Henry's trying to get undercover. Oops. And in a way, this is kind of like easier for him because he does, as I said, already have some of the sick desires of the men who go there, but he does try to fight them. He wants to do good. He wants to prove to his brother that he will help him, but that's going to cost him a lot. And part of the admission to getting into the club is he needs to deliver a slave as well. So in the beginning, we have Illy, who is on vacation with her boyfriend, and of course it ends in disaster, and she ends up getting taken by Henry and this group, and she gets taken to the island, where Henry doesn't have much of a chance to talk with her, but he's trying to convince her that, like, I'm sorry you got taken in on this, but if you will work with me, like, I'm here to take this down. My brother will be here to get us. Well, the thing is, of course, this island has a signal jammer, and the, like, GPS chip that he's wearing is not going to be able to reach Q. Like, he's going to have to find a way to send a message to Q so that he can send the cavalry. But in the meantime, they have to play the part. And so there's a lot of different things that Henry has to do to try to keep Illy out of the hands of other men who are there. And that might mean, aka it does mean, that he himself will have to do those things to her. And unfortunately, he likes them a little too much. So that's the whole setup. This is very, very dark. There really hasn't been any consensual sexual situations yet. In what I've read, everything is non-consensual, basically. I mean, there's something she agrees to let him do for the appearance of it, but it's still not really consensual, which is a lot of what happens in Pepper Winter's stories. However, to me, this isn't torture porn just because of how dark that is. There's a very beautiful note she puts at the beginning of, like, why she tells these types of stories, and it is the reason why I like to read them. The reason she tells these stories is to make people aware that this is still happening. It's still one of the worst atrocities of the modern age, is that sex trafficking happens everywhere, in every country, to all different kinds of people. And it's something that's almost impossible to stamp out, but people need to be aware of it. And that's why she writes these types of stories. So it is very dark. One thing I would say, if you do like the Deliver series by Pam Godwin, I think you could find things to love in this series, because it's the same kind of deal where, like, to save people from monsters, we become the monsters. That's a lot of the vibe that goes on in this, for sure. So this was very difficult to read. I did, as I said, have the ALC of this one, but and this is beautifully narrated by Luke William Bromley and Lucy Jessica. It was a duet narration, very well done. I actually did have to stop listening and switch to the ebook because it was difficult to listen to what was happening, but it was, like, easier for me to read it. That happens to me sometimes. So I did do that. So I gave this 4 stars. And again, like, as to how much sexual content there is in here, I put it out of the 3 or a 4, but I tend to not like to rate sexual stuff that isn't between the 2 characters. So there's a lot of sex that we witness that isn't just between these 2. So keep that in mind. And most of it is all rape. She has a full list of triggers, so definitely check that out for yourself. Okay. Then we had The Wickedness of a Highlander by Lisa Braden. It finally exists. It's here. I read it. You can read it too. There's links to all these books down below, by the way. This is book 4 in the Midnight in Scotland series, and this one is Alexander and Sabella. Now, Sabella is a character I've been keeping an eye on for a while, and she was the sister of a man who was causing problems for Alexander and his brothers. And in the beginning of this book, she's actually on her way to visit with Annie, and she had some, like, I can't remember what she wanted to bring to her, but she needed to talk to Annie. So she's on her way, she has someone coming with her, but he actually, like, dies along the way, and so she brings him back to Scotland to have him buried. And so she has hired these 2 companions to help her get there, but they rob her blind, take everything she has, and she's left with no money, only the clothes on her back, and she's just abandoned. So she needs to find a job to earn enough money to, like, get home, basically. But when she gets to the town that's not far away from where the McPhersons live, she's trying to find where they all are. Well, Annie and her husband are in England visiting his family. The father is gone. The other brothers are gone. The only brother left is Alexander, and she knows that Alexander hates her for reasons you'll see in this book. She thinks Alexander hates her, and he kind of does. He's lying to himself a little bit, but he kind of does hate her. So we're in a bit of a pickle, and she has nowhere to go. And the only person in town who happens to be looking for help happens to be Alexander. So she ends up getting hired by him to be a maid / cook / the only worker in his home, because that makes sense for this lady who's never done a day of work in her life to move to his home and be taking care of it. But yeah, it's a forced proximity. They end up living together, and she ends up learning how to cook and do laundry and clean and all these things. And it was strange. It was a strange setup, but you know what? I was here for it because I loved watching her like put up with his shit, but then also like not put up with it and be like, okay, enough's enough. Like, treat me with respect. And watching him fall head over heels for her until they just both can't stand it anymore. And now we need to be in a marriage of convenience because we can't keep our hands off each other. So I loved the story. I sucked it down so fast. I adore her writing. I wish I had 100 more books of hers to read. And I can't wait for the next one, which I believe the next one is The Love of a Highlander. And I can't wait for that one too. So I loved this. It was sassy. It was spicy. It was so fun. This was a 5-star read. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale. And definitely if you love some He's Too Big, you'll definitely like this one. Because the McPhersons are, not a one of them is under 6'5". So they're that type of Highlander for you, for sure. Okay, then I read An Arc of the Homewrecker by Sarah Kate. And this is coming on March 25th. Boy, was I looking forward to this one. This is an MMF. It's a marriage in crisis, a sex worker, and a forced proximity as well. So in this, we have one of the hero. His name is Dean. Now, Dean actually knows Caleb, but in the beginning. Okay, so Dean is a sex worker. He does a lot of his work, well, almost all of it, he does out of the sex club that Sage and Adam run, which if you read the first book, you'll know about that. And so, yeah, he's a sex worker. He is bisexual. He'll do any kind of sex work. But lately, it's really just been work for him. He actually hasn't come in a long time. So he's able to get hard. He's able to do his work, but he hasn't been able to come. He has a bit of a mind gap going. And then we have Briar and Caleb, who Caleb is one of the good brothers. Briar and him have been married for 10 years. And the thing we find out is that Dean was actually high school boyfriends with Isaac. Now, Isaac is he's going to be the prodigal son. I'm positive that he will be. And he actually left the home when he was a teenager because his dad found out he was gay and he had to leave. And now Caleb has carried a lot of guilt about that. We will see some flashbacks to how that happened because, again, Dean and Isaac were friends and they were boyfriends, although nothing more had really happened than some fooling around because they hadn't worked their way up to more yet. And Caleb, he has been hiding that he is bisexual for most of his life. He's never had the chance to act on it, but he was very afraid of what would happen to his brother if his dad found out. So he really tried to push Dean away from Isaac so that his brother would be safe. Well, the dad found out anyway, and Isaac had to leave. Now, Dean, from what he knows about the situation, he blames Caleb for Isaac running away. And he thinks that Caleb was so homophobic that he chased his brother away or told the father that Isaac was gay. Now, that's not how it played out. I'm not going to tell you how it did. But Dean has been under this impression for all these years that it is Caleb's fault that Isaac had to run. So there's that. However, in the beginning of this book, Dean's home actually burns down. His father lives with him, and his father is not doing super great. He has a loving dad, but he smokes, he drinks, he doesn't take great care of himself, and he burns down his house in the beginning. And so Dean doesn't know what he's going to do. Well, the dad, not wanting to hold his son back, he finally encourages his son. He's like, let me go into the assisted living place my pension and my insurance will cover it, and you need to be free of your old man. Like, you're 20, I think he's 25, 26. Like, you don't need to be held back this way. And so it takes a lot of convincing, but Dean agrees to it. But now Dean still doesn't have a place to live. Now, Adam, it's either Adam and Say or whatever, brings up that Caleb and Briar have a, like, garage house or a garage apartment that they were planning to rent out to someone. And they convince Caleb and Sage to offer it to him. Now, Caleb doesn't want him anywhere near them. And a lot of it is because he's very attracted to him. But also, you know, he's just a little bit, like, nervous about it too. So also we have Briar and Caleb, whose marriage is having some trouble. They've really grown apart. They are trying for a baby at the beginning of this, and sex has really become, like, only for making the baby, and it's lost a lot of, like, the passion that they used to have. So Dean, moving into this apartment above the garage, is there to shake things up. And I don't want to spoil how this goes down. I loved this. I loved this so much. This is the one that is almost a 6-star read. I'll see how I, like, think on it a little bit, because I loved this. This has one of the only kinds of cheating that I'm okay with. I'm just going to tell you, there's cheating in this, and Sarah Kate has been really upfront about that. But for me, when it's going to be an MMF, I'm actually okay with a little bit of it, because there usually has to be some way that you get an MMF started, particularly when there's already an established couple. So something that Dean really sparks up is that he sparks up Caleb's jealousy. And this has Caleb finally, like, you know, making his wife feel desired again. By him feeling jealous, it makes her feel wanted again. And watching Dean with his wife eventually, because we'll see some of that happen, gets Caleb to kind of admit his sexual desire for Dean as well. So he finally is ready to be honest about some of his sexual feelings as well. So I loved how this played out. I loved it so much. It's that type of MMF that just makes my heart so happy. And some of my favorite menages of all time, particularly Breaking Perfect by Lydia Michaels, one of my just formative books that was an MMF, was also a married couple where a little bit of cheating happened to get it going. In that one, it was actually the husband's ex-lover who comes in, and now the wife is attracted to him as well. But yeah, this was really hot. So this one also, I mean, of course, it was really sexy. I gave this 5 stars. It was a 4 on the spice scale. There wasn't too much kink in it, though. Like, it wasn't over the top. There was some voyeurism, BDSM. There's DVP that happens. But it wasn't too over the top if you're someone who doesn't want it, like, too crazy. But I loved it. And again, it's the type of cheating that I'm, like, okay with because of how it's done in this story. Like, I really am. The other trigger warning is the infertility. Okay, then I read a book for, I started the Romance Takeover Readathon books, okay? So I just have 2 of those to go over. The first one was recommended by a viewer. This viewer didn't put their name, so I don't know who recommended it. But I had seen it on Bookstagram, but I didn't really think about it. And then it showed up in my viewer rec. So I had this on my TBR for this month, and I was able to use it for the readathon as a book that is new to me author. This is actually this author's debut book. I mean, at least with this pen name. I wouldn't be surprised if this author had written other books because this was super well done, but at least for this one. So I read Alive in Wells by Bailey Hanna, and it is the first book in the Wells Ranch series. And this is about Cicely and Austin. And guys, I love this book. I loved it so much. It has so much stuff that I love. Very much Yellowstone vibes in this one, definitely, including making jokes about it. It's a cattle rancher, again, love some cattle ranchers. This one is in Canada, and our heroine Cicely, in the beginning of this book, we do have some on-page domestic violence, and she is running from her husband. He threatens her with a weapon in the beginning, like it's intense. She's been planning to leave, and she's been in contact with this woman named, oh, I just forgot her name. It just flew out of my head. But she's been in contact with this woman for about a year, and this woman's been trying to convince her to leave. And she told her, once you leave, I have a job for you. You can come, you'll have a place to stay, you'll have food, a roof over your head, and you can just leave your husband. And so she's been planning to do this, but then her husband has a final blow up at her and she has to make a run for it, like when he sees her. Instead of sneaking away while he's at work, she's got to make a run for it. And so she leaves without her phone. He'd like smash her phone. So she just has to start driving and eventually gets a payphone and gets directions to the Wells Ranch. So when she gets there, the woman who had offered her a job was this woman in her 60s, and she's actually kind of like the ranch mom. She's not the actual mother of the owner, but she might as well be. And so we have Austin, who is the owner of the ranch, but he has like, I think 2 or 3 brothers there, but there's him and there's ranch hands and one of his sister-in-law and one of their kids, like they all live there and they run this cattle ranch. And when Austin first gets a look at her, because he does meet her briefly, she has car trouble, he helps her. And when she shows up at the ranch, he's like, we do not need this pretty little city girl who doesn't know how to do shit living here. But the woman who I said, again, I can't remember her name and I'm sorry, but the ranch mom is like, you said I could hire whoever I want and I need help. And she's who I wanted. Nobody like tells him why she's there to begin with. So he's just like, why does this woman want this job? And he's very resistant to her. He definitely is very standoffish and, is trying to get her to want to leave. But, nothing he's going to do is going to be worse than what she came from, because it's not like he's actually going to be mean to her. He's just very standoffish. And she's just so thankful to be away from where she was. And so, of course, eventually he falls for her. The whole ranch falls for her. And even though her husband is trying to find her, she's found a new home. And I just love this stuff. I hate saying I love domestic violence, because I definitely do not. But I love when a woman who's running from that can find a new home. And that's absolutely what this one was. Absolutely. So I adored this. There were so many great things. It was a slow burn, but also this book wasn't too long. This book was only 300 pages. Imagine that. And the author told the whole story in here. It's what we needed. It was great. So I loved this. He was super hot cowboy. They had a great slow burn. I loved all the side characters. I'm actually super sad because the next book is coming out in April and I just missed the cutoff for an arc of it. But like, it's okay. I have enough arcs for April, but the next book is called Seeing Red, and that one is coming in April, and I can't wait. So yeah, 5-star read, 3 on the spice scale. There is some trigger warnings for domestic abuse, as I said, death of a parent is discussed, and there is branding and vaccinations that happen. Now, one note I want to make, okay? So remember last month when I read the Corinne Michaels that the dairy farming was not done right, and it threw me out of the story? Well, I gotta tell you, I have been to we don't do branding, but it was a tagging, which is when you put the ear tag in the cow so it has a number, and vaccinations. And this was written absolutely correctly. Everything that was shown. The only thing that it wasn't super correct is they end up having her helping with some stuff right away. And like, I feel like you wouldn't have her doing that quick, but the actual like branding and vaccinations and getting the cows ready and healthy absolutely was accurate. And I was like, woo! But it is a trigger warning because there is branding and vaccinations and like cow health happening. And maybe some people will think that's cruel, but it's literally to keep the cows safe and to know which ones belong to you. Like, even when you do branding to a cow is not the same as if it happened to a person. It's like us getting, it's like us getting a tattoo, literally. So anyway, okay, then the last book that I finished was one for, as I said, the readathon, and this was Puck Shy by Kayla Gross. So this book was for a novella, read it in one sitting, and it was going to be for an audiobook. Now, I'm not getting into the audiobook debacle right now. I definitely will talk about it sometime. It's not like I'm scared to talk about it. But the audiobook for Puck Shy was read by Joe Arden, and it was going to be my audiobook. And I don't want to cause any damage to an author by not listening to their book because of him. If I already own the book is the thing. I'm not going to return any books that were done by him because he's already been paid off of those. Any book that he's narrated, he's already made the money off of it, But that doesn't mean I was ready to like listen to his voice. That's kind of where I'm at, is I'm like, maybe someday, but right now I don't want to listen to his voice. So I ended up just reading this one, which I was sad. Like, I did really want to listen to that audiobook, but I hadn't bought it yet. And so since I hadn't bought it yet, I just went ahead and read the Kindle. So this one came out for Valentine's Day. And this one is book 2 in the Brother Puckers series. So I didn't even realize that how it was connected with the first one. So this one is about, I think his name is Lucas. Let me check. It's Lucas and Stevie. And Lucas is the brother of not the hockey player, but he's the one that, like, they're twins and they look a lot alike. And in the first one, that guy is recognized as him because they're twins. But in this one, it's actually about the twin, Lucas, and he goes to this Valentine's sex party at a sex club. And there's this woman, Stevie, and her friend that are doing a demonstration at the front. And he ends up getting brought into this group scene and playing with them. And it's really hot. And then they have, like, a scene after it together. Now, she knows who he is because her sister happens to be the woman that got with his brother. So she knows who he is, but she is actually a big fan, so, like, she lets it play out. But then when he doesn't know who she is, like, yeah, he doesn't know her. And then he meets his brother and his brother's partners for drinks, and she's there with her sister to meet. So then they meet, and he's like, oh my God, it's you. And she's like, we can't do anything. Like, our families are together. But he ends up offering her a job because he needs a social media person. And so now she's like, well, then we really can't have anything because I'll work for you. And he's like, we'll see. So it's quick. It's under 200 pages. This was a novella, but I also think it was still too long at the same time. I really didn't need there to be this, like, her pushing him away in a novella. You know what I mean? Like, they hook up and it's super hot, and then she's like, we can't be together. And I was like, why are you doing this in a novella? The pacing was just off. Like, we're a novella. We don't need a full-on, like, have a third act conflict or push me away, like, in a novella. You know what I mean? So it was fun. It was spicy. I mean, the whole thing is hot. There's group scenes, including, like, FFM and MFFM stuff happening. There's voyeurism, impact play, wax play. There's lots of hot stuff in it. It's all in there. So yeah, but I gave it a 3.5, rounded down to a 3, and it was a 4 on the spice scale because, I don't know, she just tried to do too much. It didn't need to be more than what it was. It could have just been the Valentine's night and then them finding out who each other is and being like, this is going to be fun. Like, it would have been fine with that. So, okay, well, those are all the books that I read in the last week. Let me know what your favorites are, what you're reading. Again, I have links to all of these down below. Again, make sure you check out the shop while I still have the sale going on. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.